Imagine the smell. A mix of burning, diesel, blood, and the sickly sweet scent of death. That was the air he breathed, the sole survivor inside a steel box that had become a mass grave for his crew. Doctors later wouldn't believe their eyes. A human being simply shouldn't be able to withstand such G-forces. But he did. He made a 30-ton behemoth dance a waltz of death right under the noses of 12 killers. Why didn't he run when he had the chance? Why did he climb into the inferno, violating a direct order and common sense? This isn't a story of poster boy heroism. This is a story of primal survival, of bloody calluses instead of medals, and of how the mad, suicidal impulse of a lone driver forever changed the history of tank warfare. You have to see this death spiral with your own eyes. Impact. Sharp as a whip crack, but with the weight of a ton behind it. The sound of tearing steel outpaces consciousness. The roar inside the fighting compartment is so loud it feels as if the air has turned solid. The tank's hull shudders, transmitting the vibration through the rigid seat straight into the driver's spine. This isn't a movie. There is no slow motion here. There is only the physics of rigid bodies and the kinetic energy of an armor-piercing shell meeting sloped armor. The shell glanced off, a ricochet. If the angle of impact had been 2 degrees more obtuse, the crew would have already turned into superheated steam and organic mist. But they are alive, for now. Inside the turret, it smells of scale, burnt grease, and the sharp, acidic stench of gunpowder gases that stings the eyes. Dmitry Vosnetsov can't hear his own breathing. His ears are blocked, and a monotonous high-frequency whine fills his head, the aftermath of the concussive wave. But his hands work faster than his brain. Fingers dug into the control levers, read the tremors of the 500-horsepower V2 diesel engine. The engine hasn't stalled. That's the first piece of good news in the last 3 seconds. The rhythm of the 12 cylinders is even, strained, without misfires. The machine's heart is beating, which means there is a chance for movement. March 21st, 1944. Time, noon, but there is little light. Through the narrow slit of the viewport, the world looks like a slice of gray and black stripes. Mud, sky, metal. Vosnetsov blinks, clearing the veil from his eyes. He needs to assess the situation. He is at the tip of the spear of reconnaissance. The task was simple: probe the grid square. They probed, and they hit a wall. Ahead, in the sector of direct observation, silhouettes are crawling out from behind a fold in the terrain. Square, angular, unmistakably recognizable. Tigers. Panzerkampfwagen 6, the Wehrmacht's heavy breakthrough tanks. The geometry leaves no doubt. Vertical armor, interleaved suspension, long 88mm guns. They aren't just standing there. They are deploying into battle formation. 1, 2, another on the right. Vosnetsov turns his head as much as the cramped compartment allows, trying to check his periphery. Movement on the left. 2 more silhouettes. His gaze darts across the viewport. 4, 6, 8. 12 machines. A full heavy tank company against a single medium T-34. This isn't a battle. It's an execution. Tactically, the situation isn't just a losing one. It's absurd. The math of war is relentless. 12 guns, each capable of punching through the T-34's frontal armor from a distance of 1.5 kilometers. And here, the distance is less than 500 meters. The kill zone. A vacuum. Life doesn't flash before Vosnetsov's eyes inside his skull. There are no flashbacks of home, of mom, of warm summers. Stress cauterizes the superfluous, leaving only dry, prickly calculation. Emotions are a luxury a corpse cannot afford. Right now, he isn't a man with a first and last name. He is a computing center, integrated into the hydraulic and mechanical control system of a 30-ton machine. 12 barrels, field of fire, 180 degrees. They are closing the pincers. They want to box me in. If I stop, death. If I reverse, I expose my side to a flank shot. Death. If I go straight, they'll shoot me point blank. Death. His internal monologue is jagged, consisting of nouns and verbs. Thoughts fall heavily, like shell casings on the fighting compartment floor. Cold sweat runs down his back, getting stuck in the folds of his oil-stained tunic. But his hands remain dry. This is professional deformation. In the moment of supreme danger, the body blocks everything that interferes with motor skills. He sees the nearest tiger begin to traverse its turret, slowly, with the heavy grace of a predator. The electro-hydraulic drive of the German machine rotates the multi-ton structure. The barrel with its muzzle brake seeks a vector for the next shot. There will be no miss this time. The Germans see a lone Russian machine frozen in the middle of a field after a ricochet. To them, it's an easy target, a statistical error that needs to be erased with an eraser of caliber 88. There is no fear. There is only the animal sense of being cornered and the weight of responsibility. Vosnetsov feels trapped in a steel coffin, but this coffin is his only weapon. He is alone down below, in the driver's compartment. The connection with the commander upstairs has been cut, or they are simply silent. There is no time to figure it out. Right now, the hierarchy of ranks doesn't matter. Right now, the one who holds the levers commands. 3 factors of mortal danger pierce his consciousness. First, numerical superiority, 12-1. Second, open terrain with no saving cover, ravines or groves. Only bare frozen earth, churned up by tracks. Third, time. He has seconds before the German gunners finish aiming and step on the firing pedals. 12 shells will simultaneously turn the space where he sits into a branch office of hell. Vosnetsov looks at the dashboard. The needles are trembling. Oil temperature is normal. Pressure is normal. Idling RPMs, but the diesel snarls, demanding a load. The tank vibrates like a living creature sensing the approach of the end. This tremor is transmitted to his hands. The T-34 is a crude machine. There is no power steering, no comfort. To turn, you have to pull a lever with a force of tens of kilograms. To depress the main clutch, you have to stomp the pedal until your knee aches. The tank is an extension of the mechanic's physiology. The levers are his bones. The armor is his skin. The engine is his lungs, greedily gulping air mixed with fumes. A flash in the viewport. To the right. Another shot. The shell passes above the turret, slicing the air with a screech that bursts capillaries in the eyes. The Germans are ranging in. They are playing. They are confident the prey isn't going anywhere from the trap. They're surrounding me. Do they want to take me intact? No, they're finishing me off. Just rushing, getting in each other's way. Vosnetsov notices a detail a rookie would miss. The tigers are packed tight. Too tight. They are blocking each other's fields of fire. To shoot at an agile target, the ones in the back have to wait for the ones in front to move their hulls. This isn't a mistake by the German command. It's arrogance. They believe one Soviet machine has nothing to oppose an armada. They see the T-34 as a target, not a threat. That is their mistake. And that is Vosnetsov's only chance. He squeezes the levers until his knuckles turn white. The muscles in his forearms turn to stone. A seemingly suicidal scheme forms in his head. You can't run from them. A shell will catch you. That means you have to go toward them, inside their formation, into the inferno, where combat distance shrinks to meters, where the long-barreled guns of the Tigers become useless poles that are impossible to turn quickly. This isn't heroism. This is raw trajectory calculation, the higher mathematics of survival, where the variables are the angular velocities of turret rotation and the linear speed of the tank. Vosnetsov takes a deep breath, filling his lungs with stale air. His foot hovers over the throttle. Now, the second stretches into eternity. He hears the German tracks clanking, biting into the soil. He sees the black muzzles looking straight into his face through the armor. The trap has snapped shut. But the beast inside the trap hasn't died yet. And this beast has steel teeth. Contact established. Isolation is absolute. Input data accepted. Decision made. Survive at any cost. And the cost right now is the violation of all instructions and regulations. Vosnetsov is ready to pay. His gaze focuses on the gap between the two nearest German tanks. It's a gateway to hell, but it is also the only exit. Now begins something that won't be written in tactical textbooks. Now begins physics. Vosnetsov stomps on the pedal. The diesel roars, gaining RPMs, but this sound cannot drown out the silence in his headset. The internal intercom is dead. It's not a broken wire or a busted device. It is a silence of a different kind. Biological. A second ago, before Vosnetsov hit the gas, he was still part of a crew, a cog in a coordinated mechanism of 4 people. Now he is the only living element in a 30-ton box of rolled steel. The lurch of the machine throws his body forward, the straps cut into his shoulders. Vosnetsov screams into the microphone, tearing his vocal cords. The commander's call sign, the radio operator's call sign. In response, only electrical static and the steady hum of interference from the running generator. No commands, no cursing, no groans. Behind him, in the fighting compartment, a terrifying stasis reigns. He cannot turn around. The narrow space of the driver's compartment doesn't allow him to rotate his head freely, and he cannot take his eyes off the viewport. But he knows what happened there. With his back, he feels the void that has formed behind the armored partition. A hit on the turret, even a ricochet, creates a pressure differential inside the armored space, capable of rupturing lungs. And if the armor spalled, Vosnetsov realizes the commander died instantly. He probably didn't even have time to realize they were spotted. The gunner and loader, if they are even alive, right now they are just ballast. Unconscious bodies being tossed around the steel floor with every jerk of the tracks. Loneliness crashes down like a heavy slab. This feeling is sharper than fear. In battle, a tanker is never alone. Nearby is the shoulder of a comrade, a voice in the headphones, a sense of collective will. A tank is a collective weapon. The mechanic drives, the commander assesses, the gunner strikes. The loader feeds the breech. It is a single organism. Now this organism has been amputated by 3/4. Only the legs and heart remain, the suspension and the engine. No brain, no eyes. No hands capable of striking back with a 76mm shell. The turret is dead. The gun is silent and will remain silent. There is no one to chamber around, no one to turn the traverse wheels. The tank has turned into a tractor. A very expensive, armored, defenseless tractor in the middle of a firing range. I am alone. Nothing to shoot with. No orders coming. The thought pulses in his temples in sync with the beating of his blood. The situation of 1 against 12 heavy tanks turns from a tactical problem into absurdity. What is the point of maneuvering if you can't snap back? Why prolong the agony for 10, 20 seconds? The instinct of self-preservation, ancient, reptilian, screams in his ear, "Brake! Open the hatch! Run!" His hand twitches toward the locking mechanism of the driver's hatch. It's a reflex. Abandoning a burning or disabled vehicle is the first rule of survival. Tumble out into the mud, crawl into a crater, become small, invisible, merge with the landscape. Let them finish off the piece of iron. Life is more precious. But Vosnetsov freezes. Before his eyes, in the murky glass of the viewport, is a panorama of death. The air outside is stitched with machine gun tracers. German infantry is cutting off retreat paths. The Tigers are bearing their coaxial machine guns. To climb out now means turning into a sieve a second after his head appears above the armor. Outside is 100% death. Inside is delayed, but inevitable death. Or is it? His hand returns to the steering lever. Panic recedes, displaced by the icy cold of realization. The vacuum of power formed after the commander's death is instantly filled by the driver's will. There is no one else to make decisions. The hierarchy of ranks has burned away. Now he is the boss here, and he is the only one here. The tank continues to move. As long as the V2 diesel devours diesel fuel, as long as the tracks grip the frozen ground, as long as the transmission transmits torque, he is not a victim. He is a combat unit. Castrated, perhaps, deprived of the ability to shoot, but capable of moving. And movement in a tank battle is life. Static is death. Vosnetsov feels his perception of the machine changing. Before, the T-34 was his workplace, a cramped cabin with levers and pedals. Now the boundaries of his body dissolve. The armor becomes his skin. He physically feels 12 barrels probing his sides. He feels the vulnerability of the fuel tanks like his own liver. He hears the grinding of the gearbox like the crunch of his own joints. Fusion is complete. Man and machine become a centaur. There is no more Sergeant Dmitry Vosnetsov, mechanic driver. There are 30 tons of rage and inertia controlled by a single exposed nerve. They think there are 4 of us in there. They think we're about to traverse the turret. They're waiting for a duel by the rules. This thought is the first step toward salvation. The Germans see the tank, but they don't see what's inside. They are operating by a template: suppress, surround, destroy. They assess the T-34 as a fully functional threat, as a firing point. They will spend time on evasion maneuvers from a shot that will never come. That time is Vosnetsov's currency. He must buy life with it. Inside the fighting compartment, there is the smell of death, a mixture of iron and the sickly sweet scent of blood. But Vosnetsov breathes this air greedily, deeply. It is fuel for his brain. The responsibility that a minute ago seemed like an unliftable slab now becomes a rod of steel. He has no right to die just like that. He has no right to give up the machine for slaughter as a stationary target. If the crew is dead, then the tank must live for all of them. For the commander, whose body is now cooling in the commander's seat. For the guys in the turret. The tank must become a monument to their last battle, but a moving, roaring, unreachable monument. Vosnetsov's gaze becomes hard, glassy. His pupils constrict. The entire universe shrinks to the size of the vision slit and the tachometer readings. Emotions switch off, as if someone cut the wires. Fear, the bitterness of loss, hope, it all disappears. Only naked function remains. Task: survive. Tool: T-34 tank. Conditions: extreme. Solution: maneuver. He isn't just a driver. He is now the brain and soul of this steel behemoth. He is alone in the field, and he is a warrior. Not because he has a cannon, but because he has the will not to surrender to physics. Vosnetsov regrips the levers. His fingers dig into the metal so hard it seems dents will remain. He feels the vibration of every shaft, every bearing. The machine is ready. It awaits the command. "Well, come on, old girl," he whispers with just his lips. There is no voice. It was torn out by a scream no one heard. "Let's dance." Ahead, in the gray mist, the barrels of the Tigers begin to spew flame. Shells tear the air. There is no more time for reflection. The vacuum is filled with action. Vosnetsov squeezes the left steering lever, throwing the tank into the first insane turn. Isolation has ended. The war of one man against the laws of probability has begun. The crash of impact and the screech of metal trigger a strange chemical reaction in his brain. Instead of panic, Vosnetsov's consciousness falls into a deep, protective layer of memory. This isn't a flight from reality. It is a search for the necessary file in the library of reflexes. The stench of burnt oil and red-hot iron suddenly changes shade. It becomes the smell of cheap gasoline, wet asphalt, and city dust. The roar of the 12-cylinder tank diesel transforms into the strained whine of a ZIS-16 bus's inline 6. 1940, Leningrad, rush hour. Vosnetsov doesn't see the snow-covered steppe and the barrels of German guns. Before his inner eye is the narrow well of Nevsky Prospect, clogged with trucks, trams, and pedestrians throwing themselves under the wheels. He is behind the wheel of a city bus again. The machine is heavy, clumsy, overloaded with people so that the leaf springs are bent backward. There is no power steering. To turn the wheel while stopped, you have to brace your legs against the floor and work with your back like a stevedore. By the end of the shift, his shirt sticks to his body and his hands shake from the strain. But it was there, in the labyrinths of the old city, that his unique motor skills were born. Army regulations teach a tanker to act according to a template: short, stop, shot, dash. The manual views the battlefield as a firing range, where there are clear distances and sectors, but city traffic knows no manuals. Chaos reigns there. The one who survives is the one who feels the dimensions of his machine with his skin. The one who knows how to squeeze a 7-meter bus into a 6-meter gap between a tram and the curb without grazing a mirror or a person. Now, in March of '44, this civilian, strictly peaceful science becomes the only weapon against 12 Tigers. Traffic jam on the left, oncoming on the right. Window, 3 meters. I'll fit. Barely, but I'll fit. Vosnetsov looks at the German tanks, and his perception distorts. He stops seeing them as deadly combat machines of the Wehrmacht, the embodiment of Germany's technical genius. To his inflamed brain operating in emergency mode, they are simply clumsy trucks blocking an intersection. They are obstacles. Static, dumb, hindering passage. The Tigers are huge. They occupy space like barges in a narrow canal. Their drivers operate by the rules: keep distance, maintain formation. They are predictable, and Vosnetsov, on his bus, always hated predictability. Because in the city, it means being late. In the city, you have to look for loopholes. You have to violate geometry. His hands on the levers of the T-34 do what they did thousands of times on the huge steering wheel of the ZIS. This isn't tank control. This is intuitive course correction. He doesn't pull the lever all the way, locking the track, as they taught in training. He plays the clutches, forcing the 30-ton machine to slide, to screw itself into space. A sense of dimensions is the sixth sense of a professional driver. Vosnetsov knows where the stern of his tank ends to the millimeter. He doesn't need to turn around. He feels the length of the hull with his spinal cord. He knows that if he turns sharply left now, the rear left road wheel will pass 10 centimeters from the track of the nearest German. 10 centimeters is an abyss. In the city, he slipped through in 5. The internal monologue changes tonality. Military precision disappears, replaced by the angry, working concentration of a driver running behind schedule. "Where are you going, you barn? Can't you see I'm coming? Turn on your lights, idiot. And that one on the right is about to stall. You can see it. He dropped the clutch. There's a window. We're diving in." To the German gunners, the behavior of the Soviet tank looks like madness. The T-34 isn't trying to retreat to the rear, isn't trying to hide. It is tearing into the center of the formation, right where, by the logic of battle, it should be crushed by tracks. But Vosnetsov sees the battlefield not as a chessboard, but as a complex intersection where you have to run a red light. This running it isn't luck. It is a calculation of inertia. Civilian experience dictates a heavy vehicle cannot stop instantly. A Tiger weighs 57 tons. It has colossal inertia of rest and motion. To turn the hull, a German driver needs time to shift gears, work the hydraulics, overcome the resistance of the soil. Vosnetsov knows this physics because he drove heavy vehicles himself. He knows that a Tiger is a tram tied to the rails of its own mass, and his T-34 is a nimble taxi, capable of changing its vector of motion faster than the tram driver can hit the brake. Vosnetsov's movements become smooth, economical. The spasming stops. He enters the flow. Lever back. The tank lists. The track scrapes up a layer of earth. The hull moves off the aiming line. Gas to the floor. The engine howls, throwing out a cloud of black smoke masking the maneuver. He uses a civilian trick, the feint. A slight jerk of the machine to the right, showing an intention to go to the flank. The German gunner reflexively turns the hand wheel to the right, and in that same fraction of a second, Vosnetsov rips the left lever, throwing the tank in the opposite direction, into the dead zone, right under the enemy's muzzle. This is the driving style of Leningrad's streets. Audacity multiplied by millimeter calculation. Fear finally gives way to professional excitement. This is the very work he did all his life. It's just that the stakes are higher now. Instead of disgruntled passengers and losing a bonus, armor-piercing slugs and a mass grave. But the principle is the same. You control the chaos, or the chaos controls you. Vosnetsov chooses the former. There is no map of the terrain with heights and depressions in his head. There is only a dynamic vector diagram. That Tiger there is a threat vector, but he is slow. That far one is dangerous, but his view is blocked by his own comrade. That means the safe zone is not in the rear, but right under the nose of the first one. Up close. So close that he can't lower his barrel. The intuition of a bus driver suggests a solution impossible to find in a combat manual. The clinch. In boxing, it's a way to rest and tie up the opponent's hands. In bus driving, it's a way to squeeze through a jam, pressing bumper to bumper with a neighbor, preventing him from maneuvering. Vosnetsov takes the tank into a clinch. From the outside, it looks like suicide. The tank is rushing straight at a wall of German armor. But inside the cabin, it is a cold calculation of trajectory. Vosnetsov feels the stern drifting in the turn. Centrifugal force presses him into the side, but he doesn't fight it. He uses it to accelerate the turn. A flash of memory. Winter of '39. Black ice on Litani Bridge. The bus started to skid. He didn't hit the brake then. That would have been death. He added gas and turned the wheel into the skid, turning an uncontrolled slide into a controlled drift. Now he is doing the same thing. 500 horsepower multiplied by the ice of instincts. The tank slides sideways, spraying mud, flying a meter from the frontal armor of the lead Tiger. A German shell passes right where the engine was a second ago. Too late. The German was half a second late. In road traffic, that is equivalent to eternity. Vosnetsov grins, the vicious, bared smile of a man who just cut off death itself. Civilian foundation overlaid on military hardware births a unique alloy. Tactics cease to be a science and become an art. The art of survival in a stream where every oncoming driver wants to kill you. The tank runs the red light and ends up inside the ring. Now the rules are dictated not by the German tank school, but by the experience of bus driver Dmitry Vosnetsov. The spiral begins to tighten. The V2 engine howls at the limit, throwing a column of black soot into the sky. It isn't exhaust. It's a smoke screen born from overloading the fuel system. The T-34 tears off not smoothly, like at a parade, but with a jerk, as if kicked from behind by a giant boot. The tracks tear off the top layer of frozen earth, reaching wet clay, and lose traction for a moment. The tank drifts, but Vosnetsov doesn't let off the gas. On the contrary, he mashes the pedal into the floor, forcing 30 tons of metal to submit to the vector of inertia. A straight line is death. This is an axiom written in the blood of thousands of crews who burned at the Kursk salient and Prokhorovka. On a straight trajectory, the speed of a Soviet medium tank is 50 kilometers per hour. The flight speed of a German PZGR-39 armor-piercing shell is 1,000 meters per second. In this race, the tank has no chance. A German gunner only needs to lead the target by half a hull length and pull the trigger. So Vosnetsov breaks geometry. He doesn't drive straight. He begins to carve a mad, logically baseless figure that would later enter textbooks as the spiral. But right now, it isn't a figure. It is chaos controlled by one man. A jerk to the left lever pulled all the way back, left track locks. The tank turns on a dime, spraying a fan of mud. The hull hasn't even stabilized before Vosnetsov drops the lever and rips the right one. The machine dips its nose, the Christie suspension groans, bottoming out the springs to metal. Impact on the ground and another jerk. Now forward, diagonally. Inside the turret, it feels like being in a centrifuge with a broken axis of rotation. Vosnetsov is thrown from side to side. Shoulders bang against steel walls. The headset doesn't save him from the blows. But he doesn't feel pain. His consciousness is narrowed to a rhythm. Gas, brake, turn. Gas, brake, turn. It is a jagged rhythm, the rhythm of cardiac arrhythmia. The tank twitches like a live, exposed nerve. To an outside observer, the movements of the 34 look like agony. It seems the mechanic is wounded, blind, or has gone mad. The machine darts between the German Tigers, accelerating, then freezing for a split second, only to jump to the side. But in this madness lies a system. Vosnetsov intuitively finds the blind spots of the enemy formation. He isn't just maneuvering, he is moving inside their battle order. He is violating the main rule of ranged combat. Do not close in. He is getting under their skin. He is shortening the distance to pistol range. The Germans are confused. Tiger crews are the elite of the Panzerwaffe. They are trained to duel at distances of 1.5 to 2 kilometers. They are used to positional warfare, to shooting targets attacking in a wide front. They are not ready for a target to be inside their own formation. Through the viewport, the sides of German machines with crosses flash by. They are so close you can make out the welding seams and rivets. Vosnetsov drives the tank in a tightening spiral. He describes an arc around one tiger, immediately shifts the rudder, and dives under the barrel of another. Right, sharper, now stop. Half-second pause. Gas! Jerk! Every maneuver is a G-force overload. Vosnetsov's hands work with such speed they blur into a single smudge. Pulling a steering lever on a T-34 is physical work, requiring 25 kilograms of force. Vosnetsov does this every 3 seconds. His back muscles are on fire, tendons cracking. Sweat floods his eyes with stinging salt, but there is no time to wipe it. If he takes his hand off the lever for even a moment, the tank will go straight. And straight is death. German turrets begin to move. Heavy, angular boxes start rotating, trying to catch the annoying Russian fly in their sights. But they are late. Vosnetsov feels this lag, this delay in reaction. Here, one tiger begins to traverse left. Its barrel, a long black needle, slowly crawls after the stern of the 34. The gunner is trying to calculate the lead. He is used to the target moving evenly. He calculates the meeting point of shell and armor. But the moment the German's finger rests on the trigger, Vosnetsov slams on the brakes. The tank stops dead. Tracks screech, biting into the earth. Inertia is killed instantly. Bang! The tiger's shell flies a meter in front of the T-34's nose, plowing the earth and raising a fountain of frozen clods. If Vosnetsov had continued moving, the slug would have punched through the side. But he stopped. He cheated the enemy's math. And immediately, gas again. The engine roars, choking on diesel. The tank jumps forward into the cloud of dust raised by the explosion. It disappears from the gunner's field of view, only to resurface on the other side. This isn't tactics from a manual. The manual says, maneuver must be simple and understandable for interaction with neighboring vehicles. There are no neighbors here. There is no interaction. There is only the survival instinct turned into a trajectory. Vosnetsov doesn't see the whole battlefield. His view is limited to the narrow slit of the observation device. But he builds a picture of the battle in his head. He remembers where each of the 12 tanks stood at the start. He keeps a tally of their movements. 4th, behind to the right. 5th, turning around. 10th, blocked by the 7th, can dive into the gap between them. The tank skids. The stern drifts. Vosnetsov uses this drift to turn the hull without losing speed. This is pure driving mastery, transferred to a 30-ton tracked vehicle. He controls the tank not like a tractor, but like a race car on ice. Only instead of a finish line, here there is one more minute of life. The Germans are starting to get nervous. The airwaves, which Vosnetsov cannot hear, are surely clogged with guttural commands. They are interfering with each other. They are afraid to shoot because their own tanks are constantly looming in the line of fire. Vosnetsov's spiral pulls them into a heap, forces them to huddle into a shapeless mass. The formation falls apart. Order turns into a pile-up. And in the center of this pile-up, in the eye of the hurricane, the lonely 34 darts about. It is dirty, sooty, with battered fenders, but alive. It moves contrary to the laws of physics and common sense. It writes its own geometry of battle, curved, broken, irrational, but the only correct one in the moment. The diesel is overheating. The water temperature needle creeps into the red zone. Inside the fighting compartment, it becomes hot as a blast furnace. Vosnetsov breathes heavily, wheezing. There isn't enough air. Carbon monoxide from the shots and exhaust seeps inside. His head is spinning. But his hands continue to work. Jerk. Stop. Jerk. The spiral tightens even more. Turn radii become extremely small. The tank spins almost on one track, tearing up the ground. Vosnetsov drives the machine and himself into a zone of extreme overload. He knows, just smooth out the ride, just make the movement fluid and predictable, and it will all end. So he continues this mad dash. A dash not away from death, but alongside it, racing it. The tank turns into a spinning top that cannot be stopped without breaking it. Flash on the right, another miss. The Germans are firing into the void, where the tank should have been according to their calculations, but it's not there. It is already in another place. It is always one step ahead of their reaction. It is always in the past for their shells, and in the future for their sights. In the present, it is impossible to catch. The battle shifts to a phase of pure kinematics. There is no more room for psychology or fear here. Only the dry mechanics of the interaction of two steel systems remains. What is happening on the field is a visual lecture on applied physics, where the stake is life. To understand why Dmitry Vosnetsov is still alive, one needs to look not at valor, but at the technical data sheets of the machines. The German heavy tank Tiger is the pinnacle of the Reich's engineering thought. 57 tons of alloy steel, a powerful 88mm cannon capable of hitting targets on the horizon. But every strength has a flip side. In close combat, mass becomes a curse. A Tiger's turret weighs 11 tons. To rotate such mass, German engineers installed a complex hydraulic drive system powered by the gearbox. At maximum engine RPM, the turret traverse speed is 6 degrees per second. 6 degrees. That number is a death sentence in close quarters. Vosnetsov's T-34 tears along a circle with a radius of 50 meters. The angular velocity of the Soviet tank relative to the German sight at this moment is about 12 degrees per second. The math is ruthless. The Tiger's electro-hydraulics are physically incapable of rotating the turret faster than the T-34 changes its position in space. The German gunner sees the target in the optics. He stomps the traverse pedal to the floor, hears the strained whine of the hydraulic pump, but the crosshairs still lag. They crawl after the stern of the Soviet tank, hopelessly late by half a hull length. Vosnetsov feels this lag. He doesn't know the exact numbers, he hasn't read German manuals, but he senses the enemy's inertia through the vibration of the floor and the whistle of slugs flying past. Heavy. Can't keep up. The barrel moves like an hour hand, and I fly like a second hand. The main thing is not to break distance. If I pull back to 200 meters, the angular velocity will drop, and he'll catch me. Need to stay tight to him, in the dead zone. Tiger shells tear the earth where the 34 was a second ago. It is shooting at a phantom. German gunners, accustomed to ballistic tables and leading for linear movement, cannot adapt to the spiral. Their brains and their mechanisms work with a delay. By the time the signal from the gunner's eye reaches his hands, while the hands transmit the command to the mechanisms, while 11 tons of armor begin to move, the target has already shifted 10 meters to the left. Vosnetsov lives in this time gap. He dances between impulse and reaction. Inside the cabin of the T-34, conditions cease to be compatible with life. The air temperature rises to 50 degrees Celsius. The V2 diesel, running at maximum RPM, has heated the engine bulkhead red hot. The cooling system can't keep up. The oil is boiling. Vosnetsov sits in this hell, soaked to the bone. His tunic has become a second skin, plastered to his body. Sweat floods his eyes, acidic salt corroding the mucous membrane, but he cannot even blink. His hands are the only interface for controlling the machine. There are no servos on the T-34. No hydraulic boosters to help a German driver turn the wheel with 2 fingers. Here, there is a direct mechanical linkage. To disengage the steering clutch and force the tank to turn, you have to overcome the resistance of powerful springs. It is the effort of a weightlifter's jerk. And Vosnetsov does these jerks continuously. The skin on his palms split 5 minutes ago. The levers are slippery with blood and sweat. Every movement resonates with sharp pain in his forearms and shoulders. Muscles are clogged with lactic acid, cramping. Fingers are curled. They no longer unbend, turned into living hooks locked onto the metal. Centrifugal force during sharp turns presses his body into the side. Ribs crack upon impact with rigid protrusions of armor. Vosnetsov is tossed like a doll in a tin can being kicked around. The headset slips, earphones press on his temples, but he doesn't notice the pain. Pain is a signal of damage to the organism, and right now the organism is the tank. As long as the tracks are intact and the motor works, there is no pain. Hold the RPMs. Don't drop them. If you drop them, you lose inertia. Lose inertia, you become a target. Right. Sharp. Now gas. The engine roars like a wounded beast. In this roar, Vosnetsov hears not just the noise of burning fuel, but the voice of the machine. He hears the valves tapping, the final drive gears howling. He knows the transmission is working itself to death. Gear teeth are crumbling, metal is fatiguing. But Soviet steel, rough and unpretentious, holds loads that would destroy refined German mechanics. The Tiger is a machine for ideal war. The T-34 is a machine for real war. Vosnetsov uses the terrain as an additional element of protection. The field isn't perfectly flat. There are microfolds, craters, bumps. When the tank dives into a small depression, it disappears from sights for a fraction of a second. When it pops up onto a bump, it exposes its belly, but changes its vertical angle. German guns have limited vertical traverse speed. They can't raise and lower barrels fast enough to follow the jumping target. It is a three-dimensional duel. Vosnetsov maneuvers not only in the left-right plane, but also in the up-down plane, using every centimeter of uneven ground. From the outside, it seems the mechanic has gone mad. The tank writes figure eights, loops, zigzags on the ground. Tracks tear the sod, throwing clumps of mud onto the armor of German tanks. The distance is so small that the T-34's exhaust smokes up the Tiger's optics. This is a clinch turned into ground wrestling. Vosnetsov intentionally rubs against enemy sides. He uses their massive hulls as shields. The far Tiger can't shoot at him because his own platoon mate is in the line of fire. The Germans spin their turrets in panic. Their coordinated fire system has collapsed. Instead of methodically shooting the target, they are forced to play tag with a machine that violates all laws of ballistics. Their hydraulics whine, overheating. Their gunners curse, losing the target in the eyepieces. And Vosnetsov continues his work, the heavy, dirty, bloody work of a driver. He spins this hellish carousel not for glory, but for physics. As long as the angular velocity of his tank is higher than the traverse speed of the German turret, he is immortal. In the viewport, a black cross on gray armor flashes again. Too close. Meters to impact. Vosnetsov doesn't brake. He cranks the lever, sending the tank into a controlled skid. The stern of the T-34 scrapes along the Tiger's side with a clang. The impact shakes the machine, tears off the spare parts box, crumples the fender. But the track is intact. Contact! Alive! Keep going! Don't stop! Movement is life. 12 barrels are looking for him. 12 gunners are trying to solve the problem of two vectors meeting. But Vosnetsov's equation has too many variables, and the main variable here is human will, multiplied by maximum engine power. Time breaks. In movies, a tank battle is a montage of bright flashes lasting a couple of minutes. In reality, it is viscous, monotonous work that sucks life out drop by drop, turning seconds into hours. The chronometer in Vosnetsov's head has stopped. It seems to him that he has been turning this accursed wheel for an eternity. 13 minutes. For civilian life, this is nothing. Time to smoke a cigarette, wait for a tram, read a newspaper article. Here, in the ring of fire, 13 minutes is 13 years of hard labor. Every second has the weight of a lead seal. Every second is bought with a convulsive jerk of a lever and a liter of sweat. The mechanic's organism fails before the machine's metal. Inside the driver's compartment, there is nothing to breathe. Ventilation can't cope with the gunpowder fumes seeping from the fighting compartment and exhaust gases sucked in through cracks. Carbon monoxide concentration is critical. Multicolored circles swim before Vosnetsov's eyes. A sledgehammer pounds in his temples. Nausea rises to his throat, a sure sign of acute poisoning. But his hands keep moving. This isn't conscious control anymore. It is muscle memory written on the subcortex. The brain shuts down unnecessary functions. Hearing dulls, vision becomes tunnel-like, the sense of time disappears. Only the reflex remains. Flash, jerk, shadow, break. The body turns into a biomechanical appendage of the transmission, a gasket between the seat and the levers. The T-34 is worn to the limit. Clutches are slipping, friction discs worn almost to metal, exuding the acrid stench of burnt linings. With every shift, the gearbox screeches as if being cut alive. The tracks have stretched. Steel track pins connecting the links are working their way out from the monstrous lateral loads during turns. If a pin flies out, the track will come off, and the tank will turn into real estate. Death. Vosnetsov hears this dangerous clanking of tracks. He feels the machine losing steering precision. It becomes sluggish, cottony. To turn, he now has to push on the levers with his whole body weight, bracing his legs against the front armor plate, working until his aorta feels like bursting. And outside, chaos reigns. The 12 German Tigers have completely lost formation. The perfect German order has turned into a scrap heap. They are spinning on a patch of ground, blocking each other's lines of fire. Vosnetsov has driven them into a situational dead end. He sees in the viewport how the turret of the nearest Tiger jerks and freezes. The gunner is afraid to pull the trigger because the side of his commander looms in the sight behind the stern of the Soviet tank. They are afraid of their own shells more than the Russian maneuver. This fear paralyzes their will. Vosnetsov uses their confusion as fuel. He dives into the gaps between the steel carcasses, literally rubbing sides. The screech of metal on metal drowns out the roar of engines. Paint burns off from friction. Sparks shower down like rain. At some point, one of the Germans breaks. Nerves give out. A shot booms almost point blank, but the shell passes high, ricocheting off the top edge of the T-34's turret. An impact of monstrous force. The tank is tossed up like an empty barrel. Vosnetsov smashes his head against the viewport. Darkness. For a split second, consciousness fades, but pain brings him back. He tastes blood in his mouth. He split his lip. Hands, acting faster than reason, level out the machine. The engine didn't stall. That is the main thing. Alive, driving, circle, another circle, endure. He no longer understands why he is doing this. The goal has blurred. Survival has become an end in itself. He simply cannot stop, just as a heart cannot stop as long as there is blood in it. It is the inertia of life. 13th minute of battle. The limit. Strength is gone. Fingers won't clench. They are cramped in the shape of the handles. Legs tremble with coarse shivers, missing the pedals. Vosnetsov feels a black veil covering his vision. This is fainting. The end. In a moment, he will bury his face in the dashboard. The tank will stop, and a second later, 88 millimeters of steel will put a period at the end. But at that moment, the soundscape of the battle changes. Through the whine of German transmissions and the crackle of machine guns, a new sound breaks through. Low, guttural, heavy. This isn't the sharp pop of a tank gun. This is the thunder of howitzer caliber. The earth shakes so hard the T-34 jumps while moving. To the right, about 100 meters away, the turret of one of the Tigers is torn off the ring like a cork from a bottle. The multi-ton structure flies into the air, tumbling, and crashes into the mud with a roar. A pillar of flame as high as a house erupts from the hull. Vosnetsov blinks, trying to focus his gaze. Through the cloudy film of the viewport and clouds of smoke, he sees the horizon. There, on the crest of the hill, stand squat, predatory silhouettes. Chopped forms, no turrets, long barrels looking straight into the heart of the German knot. Su-152. Beast slayers. They have arrived. Another volley. A shell weighing 50 kilograms hits the frontal armor of a second Tiger. The armor isn't pierced, it is smashed in. The kinetic energy of the impact is such that the ammunition inside the German machine detonates. A second torch flares up on the field. Soviet self-propelled guns, heavy artillery on tracks, have moved to direct fire. They marched to the noise of the battle, to the sound of this mad carousel. And they made it. The German crews, previously occupied hunting a lone hare, suddenly turned into game themselves. Panic changes vector. The Tigers begin to clumsily turn their fronts toward the new threat, exposing vulnerable sides and rears to the fire of the self-propelled guns. For Vosnetsov, this is the signal. Finish. The race is over. The tension that held him taut as a string for the last 13 minutes snaps. Adrenaline leaves, leaving behind emptiness and monstrous fatigue. He takes his foot off the gas pedal. The engine drops RPMs, shifting to an even, soothing rumble. The tank slows down. It rolls out of the death zone, leaving behind burning German machines and its rescuers, who are methodically finishing off the enemy. Vosnetsov leans back against the seat. Hands slip off the levers and fall like whips onto his knees. They are shaking so hard he can't make a fist. Emptiness in his head. No joy, no triumph. Only one dull, heavy feeling. Silence. Even the roar of guns outside seems distant, unreal. The main battle, the battle of his will against his body, is over. He endured. He outplayed time. 13 minutes that were worth a whole lifetime. He closes his eyes. Darkness pulses red under his eyelids. He breathes, gulping stale air with his mouth, and every breath seems the tastiest in the world. The tank freezes. Is the driver asleep? No. The driver just stopped being part of the mechanism and became a human again. A human who is deadly tired. Silence. It falls like a heavy cotton blanket, pressing the smoking field to the ground. After 13 minutes of continuous acoustic hell, where decibels tore eardrums, this silence seems unnatural, almost physically painful. Only the crackle of cooling metal and the hiss of oil dripping onto red-hot exhaust pipes can be heard. Somewhere in the distance, ammunition burns out in a Tiger hull. Dull, guttural pops, like the cough of a dying giant. The battlefield has frozen. Now it isn't a gladiator arena, but a crime scene awaiting forensic experts. And they come. Half an hour later, when the main forces have secured the line, A Willys Jeep drives up to the skirmish site. Men in staff overcoats jump out. This isn't infantry used to churning mud with boots. These are analysts, the operations department, tech service engineers. Their job is to turn the chaos of war into dry lines of reports and diagrams. But what they see before them doesn't fit into any standard scheme. The earth is churned up as if a giant mixer passed through here. The sod is stripped down to clay. Black soil is mixed with snow and soot. But in this chaos, an experienced eye begins to discern a terrifying pattern. An engineer captain, squatting, runs his hand along a deep rut. It is the track of the 34. It isn't straight. It is curved at an incredible angle. The captain stands up and follows the track like a hound. The track makes a sharp jerk to the left, describes an arc, almost closing a circle, and suddenly breaks off into deep pits, places where the tank turned on the spot, biting into the soil. "Do you see this?" he asks quietly, addressing no one in particular. "Look at the radii." Nearby, like cliffs, the carcasses of 12 tigers blacken. They stand chaotically, barrels looking in different directions, some turrets turned backward toward the rear. The tracks of their wide treads tell a story of panic. Deep ruts in place, skid marks, attempts to turn around. Heavy German machines stomped in place, interfering with each other, and between them, like a thread sewing patches together, winds the track of a single Soviet machine. Staff officers look at this picture in mute stupor. On the map at headquarters, this place was marked with a red oval, enemy armored concentration. By all laws of tactics, a lone medium tank falling into this oval should have existed exactly as long as it takes a shell to fly 500 meters. A second, 1.5. But here, on the ground, a different geometry is drawn. The geometry of the impossible. The tracks of the T-34 pass within a meter of the sides of the burnt tigers. In some places on the armor of the German tanks, scraped paint and dents are visible, traces of physical contact. The captain engineer shakes his head. He takes out a notebook but doesn't write, just looks. "He didn't leave," he says dryly, stating a fact. "He closed in. He worked inside their order." This discovery breaks stereotypes. Academies teach to use terrain folds, fire from maximum distances, work from ambushes. No one teaches to climb into the center of an enemy pack. That is considered suicide. But the tracks in the mud prove the opposite. Suicide was staying at a distance. Survival was ensured by extreme audacity. In the center of this mad pattern stands the culprit of physics' triumph over death itself, the T-34 tank. It looks as if it went through a press. The left fender is torn off, the right one crumpled like an accordion. On the turret is a deep gouge from a ricochet. The metal in that spot has turned blue from the heat of the impact. The antenna is sheared off by shrapnel. The armor is covered with a layer of soot and mud so thick it is impossible to make out the tactical number. The machine stands quiet, engine off, hatches closed. Medics and mechanics from the repair battalion run up to the tank. They bang on the armor with a rifle butt. The sound is dull, not ringing. "Hey, anyone alive?" a sergeant yells, pressing his ear to the cold steel. No answer. Mechanics climb onto the armor. The lock of the driver's hatch is jammed. The hull must have deformed from impacts. They have to use a pry bar. The iron creaks, resisting but gives way. The hatch flips back with a clang. A cloud of steam escapes from the dark opening. The smell inside is heavy, a mix of sweat, blood, excrement, and carbon monoxide. Down below, in the gloom of the driver's compartment, sits a man. He doesn't move. His hands still lie on the levers, fingers curled as if they have become part of the metal. His head is lowered onto his chest. "Alive!" the mechanic shouts, having checked the pulse on his neck. "Pulse is there, but thready. Bring a stretcher." Evacuating the driver is a complex procedure. Vosnetsov's body has gone limp. Muscles that worked at the tearing limit for 13 minutes have now lost tone. He is heavy as a sandbag. They pull him out by the straps of his coveralls, carefully so as not to damage the spine. When they pull him out into the light, the officers involuntarily step back. Dmitry Vosnetsov doesn't look like a poster hero. He looks like a man who was put through a meat grinder, but they forgot to turn the handle all the way. His face is grey, covered with a crust of soot, under which white trails of sweat show through. His eyes are open, but his gaze is unfocused. He looks through people, through the sky, somewhere into the void. His pupils are dilated to the limit. He is deaf. Concussion and the monstrous noise of the diesel in a confined space turned off his hearing. He sees the officer's lips moving, but for him, the world right now is a silent movie. His hands are shaking. This isn't the tremor of fear, it is the tremor of overexertion. Fingers are frozen in the shape of the lever grip, and medics have to apply force to unbend them. The skin on his palms is stripped to the meat. Blood has baked, mixing with oil. They stand him on his feet, but he falls. His vestibular system failed after hundreds of sharp turns and rotations. The ground under his feet is still spinning, continuing that mad spiral. Medics catch him by the arms. "Water," someone croaks. A canteen is brought to Vosnetsov's lips. He takes a sip, chokes, coughs. Water runs down his chin, washing away dirt. This sip jump-starts life. His gaze begins to clear. He sees faces, sees shoulder boards, sees the sky, gray, low, March sky, which he didn't hope to see again. The engineer captain steps closer. He looks at the driver with a strange mix of pity and scientific interest. He understands that before him is a phenomenon, a man who went beyond the technical specifications of the organism to squeeze out of the machine what the designers didn't put in. "How?" asks one of the staff officers, looking at the field littered with craters and corpses of machines. "How did he survive there? It's a meat grinder." The engineer turns to the diagram of tracks on the ground. "It's not luck, Colonel," he says firmly. "Look at the pattern. There is no panic here. There is calculation. He constantly changed the vector. He kept them in tension. This is a new tactic." Vosnetsov is laid on a stretcher. He closes his eyes. He doesn't care what these people are saying. He doesn't care what they see on the ground. For them, these are caterpillar tracks, graphs, angles. For him, it was just a road. A very bad, very dangerous road that had to be driven to the final stop. Nearby, from the turret hatch, the bodies of the other crew members are removed. They are dead. Vosnetsov doesn't see this, but he knows. He felt their silence with his back all this time. Now he is alone. Truly alone, even among his own. Silence closes over the field again. But now it is a silence of contemplation. War, rude and merciless, gave way to higher mathematics for 13 minutes. And the proof of this theorem now lies on a stretcher, covered with an overcoat, shivering from the cold coming from within. Officers disperse, but the engineer remains by the tank. He takes out a tape measure and begins to measure the distance between the tracks. He realizes what happened here today needs to be documented. Not for the archive, not for a citation, but for textbooks. Because this dirty, broken track on the spring slush is the key to survival for hundreds of other crews. Vosnetsov made a discovery. He found a vulnerability in the armor of the German war machine. And this vulnerability isn't in steel, but in reaction time. The ambulance starts moving, taking the driver to the rear. Wheels churn the same mud that tracks just tore apart. The story of one battle has ended. The story of a legend begins. But Vosnetsov himself has no time for legends right now. He just wants to get warm. And for his hands to stop shaking. And for that endless, straining howl of the diesel at maximum RPM to stop sounding in his ears. And the 34 remains standing in the middle of the field. A cooling piece of iron that, thanks to the will of one man, briefly gained a soul. War is a giant machine for destroying resources. Usually, experience dies in it along with the carrier. The crew burns, and unique knowledge gained in the last seconds of life turns into ash without becoming the property of others. The mistake of one becomes the mistake of thousands. But the case of Dmitry Vosnetsov became an exception. A glitch in the entropy system occurred. Experience survived. Immediately after the battle, while the mechanic driver lay in the field hospital recovering from severe concussion, a technical commission worked at the skirmish site. Engineers and tacticians transferred the chaotic pattern of tracks from the dirty field to graph paper. What looked like madness took on the structure of a strict mathematical model on the blueprints. Ciphers flew to headquarters. Reports went under the urgent stamp. The command of the armored forces, usually inert to grassroots initiative, worked with frightening speed this time. The reason was simple. Losses. The spring of 1944 demanded an offensive, and German heavy tanks remained a serious problem. An antidote was needed. Cheap, not requiring factory retooling, accessible to every sergeant. And the antidote was found. Just a week later, strange exercises began on rear training grounds. Instead of the usual firing from a standstill and movement in column, instructors forced cadets to do what they used to be sent to the guardhouse for. Break formation. Close into the limit. Spin figure eights. Old colonels, raised on the manuals of the 30s, clutched their heads. It seemed to them like anarchy, a violation of formation discipline. But practice is the criterion of truth. A captured tiger, taken near Leningrad, was rolled out onto the proving ground. They put an experienced crew in it who knew the machine's capabilities. Against it, they released a regular 34 with the task, survive close combat using the Vosnetsov method. The result shocked the skeptics. The German turret couldn't keep up. The Soviet tank, continuously changing its vector of motion and working ahead of the enemy's inertia, remained invulnerable for 10 minutes of simulated combat. 10 minutes is an eternity. During that time in a real battle, one could have circled to the rear and shot up the engine compartment 3 times. The tactic received an official name. In secret circulars, it passed as maneuvering with variable radius in the heavy equipment kill zone. But in the troops, in smoke-filled dugouts and classrooms, another unofficial name took root, short and angry. The spiral, or Vosnetsov's loop. It wasn't magic. It was an instruction manual for physics. Changes were made to the manuals. The text was dry, devoid of emotion, but behind every line stood the bloody sweat of one bus driver. Upon contact with superior enemy forces at a distance of less than 400 meters, linear movement is prohibited. Entry into the enemy's battle order, followed by maneuvering in a tightening spiral, is recommended. Maintain angular displacement velocity relative to the enemy barrel of no less than 12 degrees per second. Thousands of young guys, yesterday's tractor drivers and schoolboys, memorized these numbers. They were explained. Your tank isn't a target. Your tank is a spinning top. As long as you spin, you live. Stop. You die. Implementation was tough. Breaking psychology is hard. It's scary for a tanker to rush into trouble. Scary to shorten the distance when instinct screams, run. But statistics, that most cynical of sciences, began to bear fruit by May of '44. Dry report numbers landing on desks in Moscow spoke louder than any slogans. In units where the spiral drill was implemented, the loss curve of medium tanks in meeting engagements crept down. Not sharply, not crashingly, but steadily. 22%. That is exactly how much the survivability of T-34 crews increased in direct clashes with Tigers and Panthers in the first stage of implementation. In separate guards regiments, where veterans who had mastered the method to perfection became instructors, this figure reached 37%. 37%. Behind these abstract fractions were hundreds of living people. Hundreds of letters that reached home instead of death notices. Hundreds of mothers who waited for their sons. Hundreds of children born after the war. Dmitry Vosnetsov, without knowing it, saved not only himself. He gave the army a tool. He turned his intuition, his civilian driving experience in a crowded city, into an army standard. What was an improvisation of despair became a system. German analysts also noticed the changes. In intercepted Wehrmacht reports, complaints about the illogical, fanatical, and chaotic behavior of Russian tankers appeared more and more often. German gunners, used to working like in a shooting gallery, got lost. Their vaunted Zeiss optics with magnificent magnification became useless when the target darted right under their nose, filling the entire view with dirty armor. The effectiveness of enemy heavy tanks decreased. They ceased to be absolute masters of the battlefield.
Now every Tiger knew. If he let a 34 too close,
a hellish carousel would begin, in which mass and caliber lose to speed and maneuver. War evolved. It became faster, harder, more technical. And in the foundation of this evolution lay a single March battle, where a bus driver decided to argue with the laws of probability. Vosnetsov himself returned to duty after the hospital, but not to the front lines. Doctors forbade it. Too severe a concussion, problems with the vestibular system. He was sent to the rear as an instructor in a training regiment. He stood before a formation of recruits, thin, with gray at his temples that appeared at 30, with slightly trembling hands. He didn't know how to speak beautifully. He didn't use the words motherland, duty, heroism. He took a piece of chalk and drew a curved line on the blackboard. "A tank isn't iron," he said in a quiet, hollow voice. "A tank is a centrifuge. Your job is to make the Fritz in his turret throw up from how fast you spin. Remember, a straight road leads only to the cemetery." He taught them to feel dimensions, taught them to listen to the engine, taught that levers shouldn't be jerked, but felt as an extension of one's own hands. He passed on his survival gene to them, and they absorbed it. They went to the front, and there, in Polish fields, on the streets of German cities, when death looked them in the face with the black muzzle of an .88 caliber, they remembered that curved line on the board. And their hands, without brain participation, tore the steering clutch, throwing the machine into a saving turn. Rescue statistics continued to work all the way to Berlin. 1945, May. The thunder that tormented Europe for 4 years cuts off. Silence sets in. For some, it is a time of celebration, fireworks, and tears. For Dmitry Vosnetsov, it is a time to switch modes. Just as a mechanic kills the engine after a hard shift, he turns off the war inside himself. Turn of the key, click of the toggle switch. System powered down. Demobilization passes normally. He turns in government property.
the headset soaked in sweat and salt, the TT pistol, the map case. In return, he receives documents and a train ticket. No pomp. Heroism remains in award citations filed in staff archive folders. Returning to civilian life is not an ace of tank warfare, not the author of tactical maneuvering, but simply a man with calloused hands and premature gray hair. Leningrad meets him with ruins and construction. The city is licking its wounds. Vosnetsov goes to the same vehicle depot he left in 41. The garage chief, an old, hunched man, looks at his military ID, then at his face, asks no questions, just nods at the far corner of the bay. "Take the wheel. It's a ZIS-16. Old, but the suspension's been rebuilt." Vosnetsov approaches the bus. Streamlined body, headlights like kind eyes, worn seats. This isn't a tank. There is no armor here. There is no cannon here. But the smell is the same. The smell of gasoline, heavy grease, rubber, and dust. It is the smell of work. He takes off his tunic, puts on a simple shirt, jacket, cap. This ritual of changing clothes is more important than any parades. He takes off the role of a killer and puts back on the role of a carrier. He sits behind the wheel. The same hands, the very same hands that a year and a half ago tore skin on steering levers, squeezing supernatural pirouettes out of a 30-ton machine, now rest on the smooth, warm Bakelite of the steering wheel. These hands remember the vibration of the diesel at maximum RPM, remember the recoil of .88 caliber hitting the forehead. But now their movements are smooth, soft. First trip. Route number 7. Nevsky Prospect, Vasilyevsky Island. Vosnetsov depresses the clutch. The foot, accustomed to stomping a stiff tank pedal with 70 kilograms of force, now works with filigree precision, dosing effort in grams. The bus moves off smoothly, without a jerk. Passengers in the cabin didn't even sway. For them, he is just a back in a jacket, just a driver taking them to the factory, to school, to the store. They see the back of his head, see his eyes in the rearview mirror. Tired, attentive eyes. None of them guess that this man sees the street differently. Where a regular driver sees an intersection, Vosnetsov sees a sector of fire. Where others see a traffic jam, he sees a tactical dead end. His gaze automatically scans the space, assesses threats, calculates trajectories. This is professional deformation that cannot be cured. The habit of survival is ingrained in the subcortex. Sometimes, in dense traffic, when some reckless driver in a light truck sharply cuts off the bus, Vosnetsov's right hand twitches. A phantom reflex. The body wants to yank the lever, throw the machine into a skid, get off the line of impact, present the frontal armor. But there is no armor, and there will be no impact. Vosnetsov takes a deep breath. Hand returns to the wheel. He brakes smoothly. No anger, no shouting, only the cold calculation of stopping distance. In the depot smoking area, men often swap yarns. Who fought where, how many fritzes they laid low. They tell stories loudly, with cursing, embellishing details, waving their hands. Vosnetsov is silent. He sits to the side, smokes a Bielomorka now, squinting at the sun. They ask him, "And you, Mitrich, where were you? Which front?" He flicks the ash, answers briefly, reluctantly. "In tanks, mechanic." "And how was it there? Did you burn?" "Work," he says. "Dirty, heavy work, hauling iron." He doesn't say another word. No stories about the spiral. No tales about 12 tigers.
No mention that his tactics are now studied in military academies. Why? Words devalue experience. Words turn the bloody mathematics of battle into a cheap adventure novel. And he doesn't want to be a hero of a novel. He knows the price paid for those 13 minutes of fame. The price is silence in the headset. It is the dead crew behind his back. It is the smell of burnt meat that haunted his sleep for another year after the war. For Vosnetsov, heroism isn't a medal on the chest. Heroism is when you did your job so that no one died. And if someone died, it means you didn't work well enough. Nothing to be proud of here. Only things to remember. He dissolves into the crowd, becomes invisible, one of millions of Soviet people who returned from the war and simply began to live. He doesn't demand benefits, doesn't pound his fist on desks in offices, doesn't shout, "I spilled blood." He believes the country owes him nothing. He owed the country to protect it. He paid his debt. The receipt is his scars and grey hair. Evenings, after his shift, he washes his bus. Himself. Doesn't trust the washers. He takes a bucket, a rag, and wipes the headlights, glass, hood. He strokes the metal. For him, the machine isn't just a piece of iron. It is a partner. He knows the machine has a soul. He saw machines die. So he cares for his old Zis with a tenderness not always shown to people. Passengers love his trips. On Vosnetsov's bus, it never jerks. He isn't late. He enters turns in a perfect arc without reducing speed, but so smoothly that milk doesn't splash in cans in the cabin. Master, old folks say about him. They think it's experience driving on Leningrad's streets. They don't know that this perfect trajectory, this smoothness, is a byproduct of the deadly spiral. That every movement of the wheel was honed in the centrifuge of battle, where a mistake was death. Sometimes, passing military monuments, passing tanks on pedestals, he doesn't even turn his head. He doesn't need to look at monuments. He has his own monument, inside. He lives modestly. Communal apartment, wife, kids. An ordinary life, devoid of pathos. But precisely in this ordinariness lies true greatness. A man capable of outplaying physics and destroying an elite tank company with sheer willpower finds the strength simply to be a bus driver. Not to drink himself to death, not to become embittered, not to break under the weight of memory. Greatness isn't standing on a pedestal. Greatness is stepping off the pedestal, putting on a cap, and honestly doing your job. 1965, 20 years of victory. Vosnetsov is handed another Jubilee badge. He takes it, nods to the military commissar, puts the box in his pocket, and goes to his shift. He has a departure scheduled at 1400 hours. People are waiting at the stop. Can't be late. He sits in the cabin, closes the door, cuts himself off from the world with glass and metal, puts hands on the wheel, eyes on the road. Ahead, asphalt, markings, traffic lights. Life continues. And this life, calm, measured, boring, is his main victory. Victory over death, which chased him in a spiral, but never caught up. Lecture Hall of the Military Academy of Armored Forces, 1980. Outside the windows, late autumn, rain beats against the glass. But here, in the amphitheater of the lecture hall, it is dry and quiet. Only the hum of the projector and the dry tap of a pointer on the blackboard are heard. On the black surface, a complex diagram is drawn in chalk. In the center, a bold dot designating a heavy target. Around it, many vectors converging into a spiral. Nearby, formulas, angular velocities, friction coefficients,
graphs of maneuverability dependence on soil type. A colonel stands at the blackboard. He doesn't raise his voice. He is giving a lecture on asymmetric warfare tactics. Topic of the lesson: use of dynamic maneuver to compensate for technical inferiority. "Cadets, pay attention to Sector 4, says the colonel, circling a curved line with the pointer. "This is the classic Vosnetsov spiral." In the silence of the hall, the surname of a bus driver sounds. It sounds in the same row as terms like clearance, caliber, and armor penetration. It has become part of military science. Sergeant Dmitry Vosnetsov didn't become a general, didn't write memoirs, didn't speak from Congress tribunes. But he did more. He turned into a term, into a textbook paragraph that officers are required to know so as not to burn their men in the very first attack. Cadets take notes. They are young, buzz-cut, in pressed tunics. For them, 1944 is ancient history, almost antiquity. They study modern machines, T-72s, T-80s. There are laser rangefinders, ballistic computers, gun stabilizers in 2 planes. It would seem the experience of manual control is hopelessly outdated. But the colonel pauses. He puts down the pointer and looks into the hall. "Electronics can fail," he pronounces, hammering every word. "Optics can be smashed. Hydraulics can leak out. And then you will be left one-on-one with mechanics. And with the enemy." In this moment, the diagram on the board ceases to be just geometry. It becomes a testament. The spiral isn't about how to turn the wheel. It's about how to think faster than the enemy turret turns. It is the principle of the superiority of intellect over brute force. Decades later, the tactic mutated, adapted to new speeds, but the essence remained the same. In local conflicts around the world, from the sands of the Middle East to the mountains of Afghanistan, Soviet and Russian tankers applied this move. Sharp closing, entry into the dead zone, imposing close combat where the long barrel of a modern gun becomes a burden. Vosnetsov's legacy isn't a monument on a square. His legacy is living crews who returned to base because they remembered in time. Static is death. The scene changes. City park of a small provincial town. A pedestal clad in gray granite. On it, nose raised to the sky, stands a T-34. This isn't the machine in which Vosnetsov spun the carousel of death. That machine burned in Berlin, or was melted down for tractors in the 50s. This is a composite image, a symbol. Tank hatches are welded shut, engine removed, gun deactivated. Tracks, which once tore frozen earth and crushed German concrete, are now covered with a layer of black paint. The tank sleeps. Children climb on the frontal armor, grab onto handles with their hands, hang on the barrel. For them, it is a big toy, an attraction. But if you get closer, if you place a hand on the rough armor of the turret, you can feel the cold. This cold doesn't come from the metal. It is the memory of the material. Steel remembers everything. It remembers the impacts of slugs, remembers the heat of fires, remembers the scream of the crew. The tank on the pedestal isn't just a monument to victory, it is a monument to engineering genius and human stubbornness. Designer Koshkin created the ideal form, but only people like Vosnetsov breathed life into this form. Without a man inside, this tank is just 30 tons of dead weight, just a pile of ore mined from the depths and processed at a factory. Man. That is the main component of any combat system. Not a processor, not a radar, not an autoloader, but a nervous system capable of making irrational decisions, capable of ramming when shells run out, capable of hitting the gas when instinct screams break. The story of the spiral is proof that in war there are no hopeless situations. There is only a deficit of time and a deficit of will. Vosnetsov proved, if you have at least 1 second of advantage in reaction, you can overturn the world.
Or at least overturn the course of one battle.
Evening. Streetlights illuminate the park. The shadow from the tank barrel falls on the asphalt like a long black arrow. It points west, to where the war came from and where it went, crushed by tracks. Passers-by walk past. They hurry about their business, not raising their eyes. They live the very life the bus driver bought for them at the price of 13 minutes of extreme risk. They don't know his name. They don't know about angular velocities and tiger hydraulics. And that is right. A warrior does his work not for memory, but for oblivion. So that his children don't have to learn ballistics in practice. So that the spiral remains only on blueprints in the academy and in newsreel archives. The tank stands motionless. It has done its driving. But within its immobility lies colossal potential energy. It is a frozen lurch. It seems that if right now, in this very second, an alarm signal sounds, the welds on the hatches will burst, the diesel will roar, spitting out a cloud of soot, and the machine will step off the pedestal to do its heavy, dirty work again. Because iron doesn't die, not as long as the spirit of the one who held the levers lives on.